Mark here, folks. It's been a minute since I put up a video. Just been, working, still grinding, hustling, and taking care of my health, and still cooking the books, nonetheless. And right now, the book that I'm cooking is this right here. I'm cooking The Road to Reality: A Complete Guide to the Laws of the Universe by Roger Penrose. As you can see, it's a pretty dense book, right? It's a pretty book of volume, and it's, well over 1,000 pages here, and it's very dense. Like, I'm reading this extreme caution, and I'm reading it at a very slow pace because it is a gross and dense information. It's gross and dense, meaning very bulky, very heavy. Stuff that you need a dictionary, you need a thesaurus, and you need a whole lot of patience to decipher this kind of stuff here. This has a lot to do with physics, and I've been looking into space time, which is the fourth dimension, and studying. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I tell people, why do I study this stuff, right? Why do I spend most of my passing time buried in books of this nature? By the way, hold on. This is another good book right here. If you haven't read this is a light read. Eckhart Tolle. It's The Power of Now. Revolutionary in terms of your thinking. It will revolutionize your mind. It will revolutionize your paradigm shifts and paradigmatic thinking of now. All right, this is one of my favorites right here. This book, I've read this book like a million times. Right, this book is like I've read this book a million times over. It's a very good book, very good information, and like I said, it's a light read. It's not too heavy. I did a lot of highlighting in here because there's some stuff that you definitely want to highlight. And I'm studying right now. I told you in my other videos. I'm studying Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Right. So that's a study that I'm involved in actively as we speak. Well, not as we speak, but I mean at this point, I've been studying that book for the last 2 or 3 months. I've read it back and forth, but now I'm actually studying, dissecting, extrapolating, and getting the best of the best out of it. But this here, the reason why I'm studying the fixed finite speed of light, which is Einstein 1905 talks about relativity, right? 1915 it comes with general relativity, and the reason why it's important for us to understand some of the Einsteinian schemes or schematics or Newtonian schematics. It's important to understand this stuff because they talk about how. Bear with me here, indulge me. These guys discuss how objects behave. Keyword behave. How objects behave uh, in terms of forces that are found in the universe, and particularly speaking, gravitational forces, right? Or inertial forces, right? So the force of inertia. Galileo has a dissertation on the force of inertia. Uh, Newtonian theory talks about inertial mass. Einsteinian theories talks about inertial mass and the distinction between gravitational mass and inertial mass, and the equivalence principle, which means that they're both equivalent. They're both equivalent, which means they're the same. The gravitational mass, inertial mass are equivalent. The equivalence principle. And why it's important for us to understand this, because what I do when I study it, right? This is what I do. I supplement or I substitute the word object. Wherever I see the word object, I remove it and I put person, people, or a group. I substitute the word object. So when I come across, for instance, looking at Newtonian gravitational laws that says that, or particles, excuse me. So where I see the word objects or particles, I substitute both those words with people, persons, or a group of people. So when I look at the inertial forces that affects particles, right, and how a particle will either accelerate or not accelerate depending on its mass, right? When I look at that, I substitute the word again, particle with a person. And accelerate in terms of physics doesn't mean that one would think accelerate means to speed up. A car accelerates, it speeds up. Well, in terms of physics, that's not what it means. Acceleration just simply means a change in velocity in relation to time and space. Change in the velocity of an object. I told you I substitute the word object with person. So it's a change or a alteration in the person in relation to time and or space. So it's a change in the velocity. Velocity, that means speed. So it's a change. And then again, these words, they have such heavy implications because, for instance, speed, as you and I would talk in today's natural contemporary language, speed obviously we know what speed means, right? How the rate of uh, the rate that a object moves over a period of time, over a certain space. The rate that an object moves over a certain space during a certain time gives you its speed, right? So, but that's not what it means in terms of how these great minds were. What were Einstein and Newtonian and Galileo and Plato and Aristotle? What were they trying to tell us? And Eli Carton, what were they trying to tell us, right? That's how I look at this stuff. And so when you see acceleration, when you see velocity, when you see at rest, when you see an object in motion stay in motion, an object at rest stay at rest, and you substitute a person in motion stays in motion, a person at rest stays at rest. Or what they were trying to tell us is that the laws of inertia is the right mass has two meanings, right? The uh, Mass means the property of a object. Again, substitute the word object with a person. So it's the property of an object, substitute property of a person, right? So mass means has two meanings. It means the property of the object, the person, and it also means the resistance of the object to an external force, resistance of the person to an external force. They were trying to tell us something here. All throughout this 20th century, these and even before Galileo, 1800s, 19, 18, 16, 15th century, they've been trying to tell us something, right? What they were trying to tell us is that your behavior as the particle, right? Your behavior as the object, right? As the person, because anything that has anything that has energy, right, it is considered mass because mass and energy is the same thing. Again, Einstein showed us this. Mass and energy are both one of the same, right? One is coagulated, one exists as pure energy, one exists as matter. That's the only distinction, but they're essentially the same. And what these masterful minds were trying to convey to us is that all of our behavior, these laws that they were trying to teach us about is that all of our behaviors can be predicted. All of the behaviors of humanity can be predicted. All of our behavior, it can be predicted, it is predicted, and it's inevitable, right? If we are not conscious of the forces that are driving us. For instance, inertia, again, just simply means uh, in a natural, today, contemporary language, inertia just means to stay in one place, to stay still. Sluggishness, not at rest. That's what inertia means. But inertia also means to be in a certain to set out on a certain trajectory at a constant velocity without any alteration, any change or modification. That's inertia, right? And so an object that is in a state of inertia is on a straight line, right? And there is no alteration, any modification without some external force disrupting that straight line. And we human inertia is built into the matter of every single living or non-living person or object. So if you understand these laws, what they were trying to tell us, like for instance, that example, inertia, if we understand this law, then you know that you're designed to be to you and I are engineered or governed by these principles, these laws, to to behave in a certain way and to forever behave in that certain way, right? To think in a certain way and to forever think in that certain way. And here is the exception. Except there is an external force that comes in and disrupts the motion of inertia, the trajectory of inertia, the directionality of inertia, right? And if you're not aware of the science of inertia, the force of inertia, then you're just a victim. Forever will be a victim of it. You'll forever be a victim of it because you're not conscious that your behavior is being governed by these invisible forces, whether it's a gravitational field, a gravitational force, gravitational mass, inertial mass, right? All these different scientific experiments that were done to prove how objects behave, how particles behave. Newton's universal law states that all particles are attracted to other particles. And they're attractive. The interact Coulomb's law talks about that, and Coulomb's law explains Newtonian universal law of gravitation, right? So Coulomb's law he said that yes, Newton says all particles are attracted. Coulomb says there's a attract force. There's a measure you can measure the force of attraction between the two particles that Newton told you about. So these great minds, they were building on top of what one person left off, another one came in, expounded and expanded more for us. And what that means is that between every human being, right? Because I told you, substitute particles and opposite with human beings, right? Because we got to learn how to apply it to ourselves, or else this is useless information. So that means within all of us, there's an attractive force between us, and that attractive force can be measured. That's Coulomb's law, right? Charles, I believe his name was Charles Augustus or Augustine Coulomb. Don't quote me on his middle name. I know his first name was Charles. Augustus Coulomb, I think. But anywho, the point was that so the interactive force that they found that exists can be measured, and that force is proportional to the product of each person. Product meaning the result of that trait, of that energy, right? What is the product? The nature of your energy. Is it good energy, bad energy? Is it different? Is it lazy? Is it motivational, inspirational? Is it negative? So depending on the product of the mass, which is the product of the person, that will determine the quantifying of that attractive force. They can add a quantifier, which is a number, right, to say how strong that or how weak that force is. And then the force, they also found out it's inversely proportional to the distance between the two objects. In other words, the closer you are, the greater the force. The further you are, the weaker the force. Inversely proportional to the distance between them. So how this stuff applies is that now when you walk into a room or if you're in any kind of setting with people, there's always a force an interactive force between you and two people. And here's the thing, that force is independent of you communicating. Natural communication, where you open your mouth, they open your mouth, and you exchange words, right? No, that interactive force begins immediately before you even say anything to each other. And I spoke on that a little, touched on that a little bit before. But why is this stuff important? Is because again, uh, it's important because we learn how we we ought to be. We learn how to govern, right? We can now better govern our own actions. Because let's be honest, there's millions of people in the world, including myself, that do things and wonder why, right? We end up in situations and we go, why or how? How did I make this mistake, this blunder, right? So if we understand the science behind our actions or lack of actions, inertia, then we can implement, right, the knowledge, right, to get better results in our lives and achievements and just be your best self, right? So it's so important to understand the scientific gravitational inertial the spatial time space all this relativity, general relativity. There is no absolute frame of reference or reference frame. Understanding this stuff really will just allow you to maximize your potential, and again increase your dexterity in terms of people skills and knowing how to read a room and how to read a person like a book in a matter of seconds. You just read, boom, because you understand the forces, you understand the science, and you understand that 9 out of 10 people don't have any idea of the science, of this information. And therefore, if you have this knowledge, you have this insight, no matter what the person says, according to this law, they're going to behave this way. It's powerful, very powerful stuff, and it's escapable. They have to behave that way. It's in accordance. It's in harmony, and it is harmonious with the scientific laws that govern the entire universe. So no one person is bigger than this entire universe. So no matter what comes out of a person's mouth, if you know the science and you see the behavior, then you'll be able to understand. Okay, that behavior is it's going to be, in perpetuity, because it's in accordance with that law. And if that person is not aware, then they'll never be able to, again, inertia, change the trajectory of the directionality or the motion in which they are, because an object at rest stays at rest. An object, a person in motion, stays in motion. Wherever they're going, they're going to keep going. Wherever they're resting, they're going to keep resting. And resting don't just mean stationary and stopping. It does, but it doesn't. At rest and in motion, they both connotate the same thing, which is this: a person is going to keep doing what they've been doing. That's it. So don't get so caught up on, well, at rest means sleep or just laying down or resting. It means essentially objects are going to do what they have been doing. They're going to keep doing what they've always been doing. A crackhead's going to keep being a crackhead. A thief is going to keep being a thief. A robber's going to keep being a robber. A womanizer is going to keep being a womanizer. Now, a person would say, well, people can change. The law doesn't deny that. The law says, except there is some kind of influence or some kind of disturbance from an external force. Objects at rest stay at rest. Objects in motion stay in motion unless acted upon. That's the key word. Yeah, it's called a net force that is external. So there must be something from outside that has a greater force to combat the direction the person is in. So the crackhead can change, but there must be some interactive force, some kind of intervention that comes in, and that intervention must have a greater contrary force. Can't be in harmony with the crackhead, because it would be mean an external force coming in and say, hey, keep doing crack. Let's do some more crack. I got more crack for you. You see what I'm saying? So it must be a force that is contrary to the motion, the trajectory, the way that the person is already in, and that force must come in and combat it, and then there can be a change according to that law. The law doesn't change. But if there is no external force, that person is going to always stay in that straight line, which is inertia. Till next time, peace.